All right, welcome back once again to a special draft edition of Bear and Balance. I'm Jeff Berckes, joined by lead draft analyst Jacob Infante. Jacob, we're getting to the end of the draft. The Bears' likely second to last selection is some interior offensive line depth and in competition. And a gentleman by the name of Luke Newman, who played his final season at Michigan State. What do you know about him?
Yeah, so I remember going through the draft process last year, and I know he went to Holy Cross before, that's an FCS school, and they had a guy CJ Hansen, uh, who was an offensive lineman on draft radars last year, and then that's when Luke Newman, became a name to me, and then obviously he transferred over to Michigan State. He was one of the top gets in the transfer portal, coming from the FCS level. Put together a good year. Didn't allow a single sack in 2024. And I know in the pre-draft process, he supposedly performed very well at the Shrine Bowl, tested incredibly well at his pro day. As far as tape goes, I don't know necessarily if you're going to see all that athleticism that he tested at, but at the same time, that makes me think that there's untapped potential to work with. Because when I watched him, I saw a sturdy anchor and a wide base as one of the selling points with him. He does a good job of staying low and keeping his weight beneath him, and then making sure that he doesn't overset too much in pass protection. I mean, he has experience as a tackle from his time at Holy Cross, kicked over to guard at Michigan State. I think he's going to be a guard, or I know some people are saying he could be a center. I mean, it depends on if he can snap, but I could definitely see that because he doesn't have great length, but he's powerful, strong anchor, packs a nice punch at the point of attack. He's got good grip strength. Even if he doesn't have the longest arms, he has the ability to latch onto someone and then lock them out at the point of attack. Is a smart football player too. I think that's something where, he's done a better job of, I think from 2023 to 2024. I mean, obviously he dominated more off of physical attributes at Holy Cross, but I think at Michigan State, he did a better job of maintaining like proper strike placement, whether it's the actual accuracy or the timing itself. So I do think this is a solid pick. I had a fringe draftable grade on him. So I'm not going to sit here and be like, oh, this is the steal of the draft or anything. Like, I feel like this is the around now starts to be the range where it's like, yeah, I could see Luke Newman going there. So all told, solid pick. I think they needed some sort of interior offensive line depth. I was a little surprised they didn't go with that maybe a little bit earlier in the draft, but at the same time, I feel like this draft definitely isn't playing out the exact same way that a lot of people thought it was going to. But yeah, just all that to say, Newman's a solid player. I don't know if he's ever going to be much more than a reliable backup, but his versatility and his power and the raw untapped athletic potential, I think, is going to keep him in the league for a little bit.
Well, and you're talking about a guy that's now drafted in the late sixth round. So, I mean, that is what it is, or in the sixth round in general. You mentioned really good athleticism, really good testing numbers. And, we haven't talked a lot about this, but those of you that, have been listening to us for a long time know that we certainly like our friend, Kentley Platte. He's been on our show a couple times, back in the day, and he puts together the relative athletic score. I saw Luke Newman's relative athletic score come across my screen at a 9.69, which is incredibly good for an interior offensive line, compared against other interior offensive line prospects. But not only good speed grades, which, okay, maybe that's not something that a guard needs to have that much of, pulling guard, you're right. Maybe get out in space. That's good. But is an explosive athlete, which really does translate over into line play, and then has some of that agility stuff, which is that short area quickness is important when you're trying to play some of those games in the offensive line. So you can pull and trap and all that kind of stuff. So a good athlete is a welcome addition anywhere on the football field. Maybe a little bit not talked about a ton in the interior offensive line, but this can really be helpful. And particularly how Ben Johnson used some of those athletes that he had in Detroit. He took advantage of their athleticism and made them more weapons in the run game. you know, and putting an emphasis on that here with their picks, you know, you never know, right? And you never know. We talked about that 6 offensive linemen being used in Detroit. You just never, you know, we saw the last regime used a 6 offensive lineman in the backfield. Now, I don't want to hand the ball off, but you know, use it as a fullback and you know, being creative with some of your athletes, regardless of where they come from. So I think it's a smart move to try to take athleticism wherever you can find it, and that's clearly the theme of day 3 here.
Yeah, and I mean, I think in theory you could line Newman up as, you know, again, that 6th offensive lineman. You could line him up as a fullback if need be. Again, obviously, I don't want him getting the ball handed off to him.
No, let's never do that.
Please, never do that again. But I think, I mean, I think he'd be a better fit in that sort of, you know, gimmicky fullback, supersized fullback role than Doug Kramer, just because I think Newman's a better athlete. I mean, obviously, I think the testing numbers speak for it, but also just on tape, Kramer never really stood out to me as someone that's like, oh, who this guy's flexible, this guy's agile, or anything like that. So, you know, I thought he was more technically sound than anything, but yeah, I think it definitely shows there's a trend here. They're focusing on athleticism, and I know we've talked about it through these podcasts here on day 3, where you're picking for traits on day 3. You're shooting high. It's like, okay, at the very least, this guy could turn into a special teamer. And I mean, you know, that's a little bit different for an offensive lineman than it is for, you know, like someone who's going to be a gunner on, you know, in punt coverage or kick return or kick coverage or whatever. But uh, nonetheless, I mean, there's the versatility aspect, which I'm a fan of. There's the raw athleticism piece. There's, again, the effort comes down to it too. He plays with a mean streak. Even if he's not always the biggest guy, I mean, his size is okay. Like, it's not bad. It's not amazing. Uh, I think it's the length that's really more of a concern. It's going to be nullified a little bit more in the interior, but still there are some times where you'll get like a lengthy 3 technique who can, you know, lock them out a little bit easier. But regardless, I mean, you have the athleticism, you have the effort. I think, you know, that's been consistent with what we've seen from Frazier. That's been pretty consistent. We both with what we saw with why am I literally just a Hippolyte?
Right.
I had to
Drafting traits today.
Yeah, it's traits. It traits, and I think athleticism and effort are really showing off here on both sides of the ball.
One thing I want to close with is this, you know, this guy's journey, and obviously I'm just, you know, learning about this a little bit here, but 4 years at Holy Cross and considered going into the draft last year off of just his FBS tape, but then chose to go into the transfer portal and transfer close to home. He's a Michigan native, and his parents are Michigan State grads. So, just in that story, I think that's pretty cool, right? To be able to try to level up, you know, take that step up to, you know, the top level of competition in college, and be able to play for your home team, which I think is pretty great, and then take that year of progress and tape and move that to the NFL level. Almost certainly he would have gone undrafted last year, I would have thought.
Yeah.
And so now you put that year in, you put that year of work, you show that you can step up to that next level of competition. And here you are being drafted into the NFL because you took that extra year. So I think that's really great. Maybe a potential lesson for a lot of guys out there that are trying to make that same move. I think the transfer portal has a lot of critics, but I also think that this is a really interesting success story.
Yeah, no, 100%. And I think that, you know, I mean, you don't see a ton of small school players necessarily, you know, declare early, but at the same time, this also goes for, you know, Power 4 schools, but guys who are maybe a little bit more raw. I feel like it's usually beneficial to take advantage of that extra year of eligibility if you have it, if you're not like an early round pick. And obviously there are some instances where, okay, maybe you just, you know, you need to get the paycheck, whatever the case might be. But even in the case of NIL now, you know, there's ways for these college athletes to make income. But I mean, I think that it definitely shows the importance of, you know, honing your craft and making sure that you're bringing the best version of yourself into the NFL. I know a lot of, student athletes sometimes can be super eager. It's like, oh, I want to go to the pros. I want to play NFL football as soon as possible. Uh, but you can end up making yourself a lot more money down the line by having that one extra year of seasoning to work with. And, maybe if you have these traits, but you're not necessarily maximizing them or the most consistent with them, then you could go undrafted, or, you could get drafted significantly lower than you would be otherwise. So I think it's a good point for sure. Newman sticking with it, going to, testing himself at a higher level at Michigan State, performing well, and then now here getting drafted, even if it's the 6th round. I mean, yeah, I think if he were, to declare last year, he wouldn't have gotten drafted. So now for him to get drafted and to, be able to have the chance to compete for a 53-man spot, I think is, it's a step up for sure. So it's going to be intriguing to see how this process all plays out for him.
All right, we're almost at the end. That's Luke Newman, offensive lineman from Michigan State, Big Ten, all honorable mention, all Big Ten, I should say, from this last year. So good for Luke Newman, and good for the Bears for adding 2 offensive line pieces in this draft, 1 a tackle prospect and 1 an interior prospect. And as of right now, they have 1 more pick on the books. So we will see each other one more time and wrap up this draft.